am talking about what I'll be discussing. I have an overview, why I chose this topic, some information on the structure, also a little bit about some of the recurring themes that translated into my paper that also were present in my resources, and then a conclusion. So this creative thesis project is an autobiographical piece that explores my relationship with my hair and my identity over time. It uses personal memory and lived experiences, since an autobiography is that way in nature. And so it connects hair to self-discovery and cultural meaning, where my main point that I really wanted to emphasize is the fact that hair is not just about appearance, it holds great significance and importance. So why this topic? I obviously have a very personal connection to this project since it's an autobiography. And so hair has been a very consistent part of my life, especially as a Black woman, and whether that's from my family members or from society. And so I had a desire to understand my identity more internally, and felt like this project was a great way to go about that. And I was heavily inspired by personal style social media trends, specifically on TikTok and YouTube, since those are the primary platforms that I use. And then also heavily by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, where I saw her dissent collar from a photo that was based off of the inauguration, and I just took that as a sign to go about this topic. And so as far as my project evolution, I ended up shifting from a more style focus to hair as my main focus. At first I had a lot of different areas I wanted to focus on, where it was personal growth and mental health, family, hair, and style. And so, right, and so just kind of holding that in, niching down, and focusing, and then being able to touch on those different areas throughout, I found more effective. And so there's also a strong emphasis on memory and personal experience, since I'm going through and recalling and just explaining some of those different memories and connecting them to my resources. And I also had a kind of a shift in the idea or my understanding of identity. I at first thought that identity was something that, like, you have these certain categories of things that make up me as a person, but through this process I've really realized that it's more of a morphing. It takes shape in different ways, and the word that I use in the thesis is the idea of curation, which I took inspiration from social media content creators, and how there was a discussion about how they are able to curate their content and present themselves in a way that attracts a certain audience, makes them more marketable, and they use it as an effective business strategy. So with that, I really wanted to figure out how can I implement this in my everyday life. So my project structure, I have my introduction, which is more academically based. It just has my different resources, how I took inspiration from them, or what I was able to kind of take from that. I have Chelsea as a child, which discusses my early memories and first recollections, or the first things that kind of created my foundations for hair. Chelsea as kin is all about family influences, and I actually took inspiration from the book Kindred, which my mother introduced me to, so that's where kin comes from. And then navigating my identity as a student with the Chelsea as a student section, which really and truly what I discussed in that section could be used in any context, whether it's for student life or just the life of a minority. Chelsea as a curator, which again is more about that intentional identity curation. And then evolving just talks about ongoing growth, and I took inspiration for the evolving section from Michelle Obama's Becoming, where after taking a look at her book and also watching her documentary, she kind of explained the idea of becoming as you almost arriving to a space where you are who you aspire to be, And so instead of using her word becoming, and I also feel like evolving is more, it kind of describes more of that consistent growth in my mind more than becoming, and it's more personal to me. And then each chapter has pictures that represent each stage of my life or strongly correlate with that section. And then I have quotes that resonate as well. And both of these things, the pictures and the quotes, just help support the storytelling. And my goal with this, I did not want it to be something that was solely chronological, where you had to, start from beginning to end. So it's written where you can start from, student and then child and then curator and evolving, or whichever way that the reader really wants to take it. And I did want to read a little excerpt since my dad has not heard any of this. So Chelsea is a student, which the additional part of the title is learning about navigating hair invisibility. And like I said, I have a quote for each section. So the quote that I use for this one is from Toni Morrison, and she says, "The very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being." And the excerpt that I chose was, "In moments like these, my hairstyle and twist began to feel different. In South Carolina, I was used to being one of the few black students in the room, and sometimes, like this class, I was the only one. My hair had originally felt like a simple protective style, suddenly felt loud, even when I was silent and made an effort to shrink myself. In that space, where I was already the only black girl in the room, my hair felt like it had made me more visible and even more undeniable. I couldn't shrink my blackness if I wanted to. My hair didn't change when I got off that plane in Boston, but the way it felt did. It didn't matter that I had the same academic credentials as everyone else on the trip, or that I paid my fare. I could not separate my hair from my blackness, and I could not separate my blackness from how I was being seen. I was othered and made to feel less than due to the cold treatment." So with that, I wanted to touch a little bit on the key themes that, like I said, were present in the paper, and then I also found as a kind of consistent theme throughout the different resources. So for starters, I had hair as something that obviously you can touch, care for, and also reflects lived experiences. And so those are really mentioned in Rajan Rockin's resource and Johnson and Bacon's resource. Secondly, hair as cultural and historical identity. I touched on that with Madam C.J. Walker, the Crown Act, mentions of Aunt Jemima, and like I said, Cassandra Jackson. And then finally, navigating Black identity in spaces with Kwashi and D'Angelo's books, and then the hairpiece short film, and then the Daughters of Dust film. And finally, my takeaways in this process, and also that can be taken from the paper. Hair is heavily tied to identity and memory. Identity is something that I can actively shape, and my identity is continually evolving. And yeah, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify anything. I'm happy to give feedback.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come sit at the table with us?
If I unplug this, is it gonna?
No, you can unplug.